One of the biggest newspapers in the United Kingdom just published a piece examining whether the 2026 World Cup is being run fairly for Argentina. Not a fringe blog, not a social media account with 100 followers and an agenda. One of the most respected sports journalism institutions in the English-speaking world, with over 150 years of publication history, sat down and forensically examined 5 separate claims that have been circulating across the football world over the past 3 weeks. Now, to be completely clear about what that piece does and doesn't say, because precision matters here, it does not conclude the World Cup is rigged. It does not accuse FIFA of fixing matches. What it does is document the specific incidents that have generated so much discussion, analyze them with the rigor of professional journalism, and ask out loud whether the accumulation of these moments represents a pattern that FIFA has an obligation to address. And the fact that a newspaper of that stature felt those questions were worth 3,000 words of serious examination tells you more about where this conversation has arrived than any social media post could. So let's go through every single claim, one by one, with the actual evidence behind each one, because you deserve to understand exactly what is and isn't being argued here, and why this story has become impossible for the football world to look away from. The first incident involves Messi directly, and it happened in Argentina's opening group match against Algeria. A challenge by Messi caught an Algerian defender, Issa Mandi, in the Achilles with his studs. Multiple pundits watching in real time said it should have been reviewed as a possible red card. Former Manchester City defender Nedum Onuoha said on ESPN that in his opinion, it should have been a red card, that Messi knew he did something that could have gotten him in trouble. Former Venezuela forward Alejandro Moreno went further, saying it was 100% a red card for Messi and should have been given. Algeria filed an official complaint with FIFA afterward. VAR did not review it. No card was shown. Messi played on. Here's where things get interesting. In that same tournament window, Fuller and Balogun received a straight red card for a challenge that multiple analysts described as comparable in severity. Balogun's foot landed on the back of an opponent's ankle. Messi's studs caught a defender's Achilles. Both challenges involved unintentional foot-to-leg contact during a contest for the ball. One resulted in a red card and an automatic suspension. One resulted in no action at all. The contrast between those two outcomes was not lost on anyone paying attention, and it fed directly into the broader consistency debate that has followed this tournament ever since. The third claim is about the tournament bracket, and this one requires a bit of context before the argument becomes clear. Argentina, as defending champions, were among the top seeds for the 2026 draw. That seeding meant they were placed in a bracket position that, under the draw structure, protected them from facing the other top seeds until the semi-final. France, England, Spain, and Argentina cannot meet before the final 4 under the way the bracket was constructed. That's standard seeding logic, and it applies to every tournament in this format.
But here's the interesting part. The teams that Argentina have actually faced on their route to the quarterfinals are Algeria, Saudi Arabia, Cape Verde, and Egypt. None of those 4 sides was ranked in the top 30 in the world at the start of this tournament. Compare that to the bracket that France have navigated, which included Sweden, Norway, Morocco, and potentially Spain or Croatia in the quarterfinal depending on results. The question isn't whether Argentina's seeding was applied correctly according to the rules. The question, and it's a legitimate football question, is whether the combination of seeding rules and draw luck produced a path through the bracket that was significantly less demanding than what several other contenders have faced. The answer to that question, based on the rankings of the teams involved, appears to be yes. Now let's talk about the moment that generated more immediate reaction than almost anything else in this tournament: the appointment of the officiating crew for France versus Morocco in the quarterfinal. FIFA announced that all 5 on-field officials for that match would be from Argentina: the referee, both assistant referees, the 4th official, and the 5th official. Every single one. From the country that is still in the tournament, whose captain Messi has been the defining individual player of the competition, and whose continued presence generates more commercial interest for the tournament than virtually any other remaining team. FIFA's defense of this appointment is procedurally straightforward. Referee appointments are made by an independent appointments committee, based on performance evaluations, not nationality. Argentine referees, like all others in this tournament, qualified through a rigorous selection process before the competition began. 3 French referees were in charge of Argentina's match against Egypt, which demonstrates the appointments committee was not deliberately pairing French officials with Argentine matches or vice versa. But here's the thing about perception. Even if every procedural step in that appointment was followed correctly, and there's no evidence it wasn't, the optics of an all-Argentine officiating team overseeing Argentina's biggest remaining rival, at the moment Argentina are still in the tournament, created a wave of reaction that FIFA should have anticipated. Not because the referees themselves would do anything improper, but because in the current atmosphere around this tournament, with Egypt's complaint filed, with Belgium's complaint filed, with Algeria's complaint filed, with the Balogun situation still generating discussion, the appointment looked tone-deaf at best. You don't have to believe anything improper occurred to believe FIFA made a poor decision in not considering the perception implications of that appointment, given the specific context of this specific moment in this specific tournament.
And then there's the FIFA president himself. After Argentina's round of 32 match against Cape Verde, which Argentina won 3-2 in extra time after Cape Verde had pushed them to the absolute limit, Infantino stopped to address Argentine television, and what he said was that he had suffered with them during the match, that it had been a difficult evening for him watching it. He then immediately tried to walk it back, saying he was speaking on behalf of neutrals who were rooting for both teams. But the words were already out. The president of the governing body that is supposed to oversee this tournament with absolute impartiality, speaking to the national broadcaster of one of the competing teams immediately after their match, saying he had suffered alongside them. Think about what that image communicates to every other team in this tournament. Egypt, who had just been eliminated by Argentina in a match that produced a formal complaint. Algeria, who had filed their own complaint weeks earlier. Morocco, who were about to be refereed by 5 Argentine officials in a quarterfinal. Every single federation that is still competing in this tournament now has that image in their mind when they think about the institutional impartiality of the competition they're participating in. Now, let's zoom out completely, because the broader picture matters here, and it's one that requires honesty about what we actually know versus what we're seeing. Argentina are a brilliant football team. That is not in question. They have Messi, who remains statistically the most impactful player in this tournament by virtually every metric being tracked. They have Lautaro Martinez, Enzo Fernandez, Alexis McAllister, a squad built for exactly this kind of sustained knockout pressure over multiple matches. They don't need favorable officiating to beat Algeria or Cape Verde or Egypt. The talent gap alone goes some way to explaining why Argentina keep finding ways to win matches they're struggling in. That's what champions do. That's what the greatest player of his generation does in the most important moments. But here's the thing that the football world needs to sit with honestly. The question of whether a team is good enough to win without help, and the question of whether they received consistent officiation treatment compared to their opponents, are 2 completely separate questions. Argentina being genuinely great doesn't answer the consistency question, and the consistency question, based on everything documented across this tournament, is one that FIFA hasn't answered. This goes back to 2022, and that historical continuity is part of why the current conversation is so charged. In Qatar, Argentina were awarded 5 penalties, the most any team has ever received in a single World Cup. Messi took all 5. They won a match against the Netherlands that Louis van Gaal later described publicly as premeditated, a strong word from a serious football figure that was never adequately addressed by FIFA at the time. The conversations didn't start with Egypt versus Argentina in 2026. They've been building across 2 World Cup cycles, and the Egypt match was the moment they reached a volume that one of the UK's most respected newspapers decided warranted serious examination.